What happens when a man who stormed out of one of the most infamous interviews in TV history returns to the very same chair, only angrier, more defensive, and more unhinged than before? And what happens when the journalist he insulted, dismissed, and provoked refuses to let the past repeat itself? Prince Harry came back to 60 Minutes, insisting he was ready to set the record straight. But Anderson Cooper knew the truth. Harry hadn't come for clarity. He'd come for combat. This wasn't just a follow-up interview. It was a rematch. And the world would soon see that some wounds never close. The room looked exactly as it had a year earlier. Same soft lighting, same minimalist chairs, same air of quiet seriousness that defined 60 Minutes. But the energy? It was entirely different. Prince Harry strode into the studio with a smirk carved across his face. The kind of expression that said he hadn't come to be questioned. He'd come to be worshipped. His chin lifted high, posture stiff with arrogance. He didn't wait for direction from the crew or the producers. He simply sat down, slouched back, and crossed his legs like a man stepping onto a throne. Anderson Cooper walked in moments later, polite as always, composed, holding a folder of notes. But anyone who had seen the previous interview knew this wasn't just another guest. This was unfinished business. They shook hands. A handshake long enough to be uncomfortable. "Harry," Anderson said with his practiced calm, "thank you for agreeing to another conversation with us." Harry scoffed lightly. "Well, considering how you handled the last one, I figured you deserved a chance to redeem yourself." A couple of producers exchanged looks. The tone was set. Harry was here to provoke. Anderson didn't flinch. "Last time ended in a way none of us expected. You walked out mid-interview." Harry waved a dismissive hand. "Please, I didn't walk out. I simply refused to continue being spoken to like some child. You weren't listening." "I was doing my job," Anderson said, "and I intend to do the same today." Harry smirked again, leaning back further in his chair. "We'll see." The cameras rolled, the red light blinked on, and the interview officially began. "Harry," Anderson started, "let's begin with something simple. Why come back? Why speak again, especially after how the last interview ended?" Harry shrugged, eyes narrowing slightly. "Because people are still misunderstanding me. They twist everything I say. They misinterpret my intentions. I thought perhaps, naively, that you'd give me a fair platform this time." "You were given one last time." "Anderson," Harry snapped, "don't." The tension rose immediately, much faster than last time. Harry inhaled sharply. "I'm here to clarify misconceptions, but if you're planning to repeat the same tired tabloid questions..." "I'm not," Anderson interrupted gently. "I'm planning to ask about your life, your choices, your position today." Harry rolled his eyes, as if even hearing the word choices offended him. "Fine," he muttered. "Ask away." Anderson began with current events, projects Harry had launched, initiatives he had been promoting. But Harry's answers were clipped, arrogant, dripping with disdain. "Do you feel your recent work has been received positively?" Anderson asked. Harry scoffed. "Well, unlike you or the British press, the people who matter understand what I'm doing." "And who are those people?" Anderson asked. "Those intelligent enough not to need everything explained slowly," Harry snapped. A few crew members stiffened. Anderson kept his voice soft. "All right, let's talk about Meghan." Harry's jaw tightened instantly. "No," Harry said flatly. "I know how this works. You'll twist her words, twist my words, twist our marriage into entertainment." "I'm asking because your marriage is part of the public conversation," Anderson replied calmly. "And whose fault is that?" Harry shot back. "Yours, the media, the public. Everyone obsessed with us like we're characters in their little TV drama. You choose to speak publicly about your private life," Anderson reminded him. "Through interviews, documentaries, your book. You've opened that door yourself." Harry's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Ah, the old 'you're contradicting yourself' argument. Very original, Anderson." Anderson remained steady. "It's a reasonable observation." "It's an annoying one," Harry muttered, "but that's expected. You Americans love moralizing about things you don't understand." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted from tense to hostile. Anderson paused, then calmly continued. You've criticized the monarchy many times, yet many feel you still use its influence while distancing yourself from its responsibilities. Do you see how some might view that as— Stop, Harry snapped, raising a hand. Let me guess. Hypocrisy, contradiction, spare me. I'm asking, Anderson repeated softly, because it's what many people are wondering. Then they should wonder less, Harry snapped. People are obsessed with the monarchy, obsessed with me, obsessed with Meghan. It's pathetic. And yet, Anderson said gently, you're here, again, speaking publicly. Harry's smirk widened, a dangerous smug grin. Oh, Anderson, you still don't get it. I'm not here because I need your show. I'm here because your show needs me. The studio went still. You walked out last time, Anderson reminded him. I did, Harry said proudly, because I won the argument, and the world saw it. Anderson blinked once, slowly. This was going to be worse than last time, much worse. If the first minutes of the interview felt tense, the next moments felt like a pressure cooker, building steam with nowhere to escape. Anderson Cooper remained composed, but the tightening muscles in his jaw, the deeper breaths, the subtle narrowing of his eyes hinted at something he rarely showed on camera. Strain. Harry, meanwhile, sat with increasing arrogance, leaning back, crossing his arms, smirking after every answer, as if awarding himself points in a game only he thought he was winning. Anderson clasped his hands gently. Harry, last interview ended abruptly. This time, I hope we can finish our conversation without interruptions. Harry laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Well, that depends on you, doesn't it? Don't ask nonsense and I won't have to walk out again. A ripple of discomfort moved across the crew. Anderson stayed still. Let's talk about something current, he said. Recently you criticized the British press again for their coverage. Some said your comments were unusually aggressive, even for you. Do you stand by them? Harry shrugged dramatically. Of course. I meant every word. The British press is a vulture pit. Frankly, I could say worse and still be telling the truth. And yet, Anderson said calmly, you appeared on multiple podcasts afterward, discussing the media extensively. Some felt you were escalating rather than diffusing the tension. Harry rolled his eyes. You Americans always want diffusion, resolution, closure, very therapeutic of you. Meanwhile, the world doesn't work that way. I'm not here to make everyone comfortable. You certainly don't, Anderson said under his breath. Harry smirked. Was that supposed to be clever? No, Anderson replied softly. Just honest. Harry's stare hardened. Anderson pressed on. You've spoken about toxic institutions, family dynamics, and the impact of your upbringing. But what about your relationships now? With William? With your father? Harry scoffed again, shaking his head. I don't discuss private family matters. Anderson blinked twice. You discuss them in your book. That's different, Harry snapped. That was my voice, my perspective, not yours. Anderson nodded slowly. And this isn't your voice? Harry leaned forward, eyes sharp. This is me tolerating you long enough to fix your reputation after our last incident. Fix my reputation? Anderson repeated calmly. Harry nodded confidently. You looked unprofessional last time, chasing headlines, trying to corner me. Honestly, I'm surprised they let you interview me again. A producer in the back subtly raised both eyebrows. Anderson didn't react. I asked straightforward questions, he said. You didn't like them. I didn't like the tone, Harry corrected, or the implication that I owe the public anything. You're a public figure, Anderson replied. Harry snapped. By birthright, not by choice. Something you'd never understand. Anderson inhaled deeply, slow, deliberate. Harry, you moved to America. You signed major deals. You sought the spotlight on your own terms. Some might argue that was a choice. Harry stiffened. And here we go again. Anderson Cooper, moral compass of the world. Anderson held his stare. I'm simply asking the questions that millions want answered. Millions, Harry mocked. Please, the only people who want answers are those with nothing interesting in their own lives. It was an insult to the viewers, and everyone knew it. Yet Anderson remained unshaken. All right, Anderson said quietly. Let's talk about Megan. Harry's shoulders tensed instantly, his jaw locked. No, he said sharply. Not this time. I know what you're doing. You're trying to bait me. I'm asking about her because she is an important part of your story. Harry's voice rose. You're obsessed with her. The media's obsessed with her. Everyone obsessed with a woman they don't deserve to talk about. Harry, Anderson said softly, she has spoken publicly many times, shared her experiences. Is it unreasonable to ask about that? It is when the questions come from you. Anderson raised an eyebrow, confused. Me specifically? Harry leaned forward, voice dripping arrogance. You have a condescending way of asking questions, Anderson. It's irritating. You talk like you're above everyone, like you're the voice of reason. But you're not. You're just another man with a microphone. Anderson sat perfectly still. His professionalism was iron. And yet, he said softly, you're here again. Harry froze. The truth of that hit harder than intended, but instead of acknowledging it, he doubled down. I'm here, Harry said sharply, because this show begged for me, because you wanted ratings, because after last time, everyone talked about me, not you. Anderson finally felt the chill hardening inside him. This was no longer an interview. It was provocation. He tried one more shift. Let's look ahead, Anderson said. Your charitable projects, your upcoming initiatives. Spare me, Harry interrupted. You don't care. You just want another headline. Harry, Oh, drop the act, Harry said with a sneer. You care about the drama. That's why you're here. That's why cameras are here. Without people like me, you're just another journalist struggling for relevance. The room froze. The crew looked at Anderson, waiting for a reaction. He gave none, but inside him, something cracked. Anderson, Harry taunted. No clever response, no soft, professional dismissals. Anderson inhaled slowly, like a man choosing patience over impulse. Let's continue, he said quietly. If we can. Harry laughed. I'm the reason you have a show today, Anderson. Let's not pretend. This time, Anderson didn't reply, but his eyes darkened, just enough for the crew to sense the shift. The interview was no longer salvageable. The unraveling had begun. The red light above the camera glowed steadily, but inside the quiet 60-minute set, nothing felt steady anymore. Prince Harry lounged in his chair like it was a throne he hadn't asked for, but now enjoyed occupying. Anderson Cooper, on the other side, sat upright, posture still impeccable, but there was something new in his eyes, fatigue laced with disbelief. He'd handled dictators, war criminals, grieving parents. But this was different. This was a man who seemed determined to sabotage his own interview and blame everyone else for the wreckage. Anderson folded his hands slowly. Harry, he began, voice even, last time you were here, you left abruptly. People argued for weeks about whether I pushed too hard, whether you overreacted, or whether both things were true at the same time. Harry smirked, unfazed. Oh, I'm sure they did. People love pretending they understand me. Anderson continued, ignoring the jab. Tonight, you agreed to come back. You said you wanted to clarify things. Do you still feel that's why you're here? Harry shrugged with theatrical boredom. I'm here because you needed me to be. Don't try to dress it up as anything nobler. So you don't feel you have anything to clarify? Anderson asked. No, Harry snapped. I was clear the first time. The problem wasn't what I said. It was that your audience didn't like how I said it. That's their problem, not mine. A tight silence filled the space between them. Anderson pressed on. Some viewers felt you came across as angry and entitled. Harry immediately cut in. Of course they did. That's the favorite label for anyone who doesn't bow and apologize on cue. Entitled. It's lazy. And you don't see any truth in that? Anderson asked. Harry's eyes sharpened. I see a lot of projection. People who have never had a shred of my experience lecturing me about how I should behave. I lost my mother to this machine. I survived decades of scrutiny. If I sound angry, it's because I have a reason to be. I don't owe anyone a palatable tone. Anderson nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to be palatable, he said. I'm asking if you think there's a point where anger stops being fuel and starts becoming identity. Harry laughed, but there was no warmth in it. You're really trying for a deep moment, aren't you? No, Anderson, my identity is not my anger. My identity is my truth. If people can't handle it, they can turn off the television. But they didn't, Anderson replied. They watched, millions of them. And many felt the same thing, that you wanted the benefits of being heard without accepting any of the responsibility that comes with speaking so loudly, so publicly. Harry tilted his head, mockingly curious. Responsibility to whom, exactly? To the press? To the public? The people who know nothing about me? To the truth, Anderson said quietly. Harry snorted. Oh, spare me. The truth is whatever you decide to slice into sound bites and headline segments. Don't pretend you're some neutral guardian of it. Anderson's expression didn't change, but there was a slight tightening at the corners of his mouth. Let's talk specifics then, he said. You've accused members of your family, unnamed but heavily implied, of serious things. Emotional neglect, racism, manipulation. You've described institutions as brutal and inhumane, yet you refuse to name names or provide details beyond your own perception. Do you understand why some people call that convenient? Harry's tone turned instantly icy. What you call convenient, I call necessary. I still have some shred of loyalty, even if they don't deserve it. I'm not going to hand the world a list of targets. And yet, Anderson replied, you've already painted the outlines. You've pointed enough fingers for people to fill in the blanks. Harry leaned forward, jaw set. So now, I'm responsible for everyone else's imagination? That's rich, coming from someone whose industry thrives on speculation. I don't work in speculation, Anderson answered calmly. I work in documentation, in testimony, in evidence. And in judging, Harry snapped. Anderson met his stare, unblinking. Judgment comes from the audience. I ask the questions. You give the answers. They decide. Harry's lips curled into a sneer. Right? So, when they call me ungrateful or arrogant, you get to wash your hands and say, I just asked what they were thinking. Very convenient job description. There was a faint involuntary twitch in Anderson's cheek. It was the first visible crack. Harry, he said quietly, I don't need to weaponize your words. You're doing that yourself. For a split second, the remark landed. Then Harry scoffed it away. You're not as clever as you think you are, he muttered. And you're not as untouchable as you think you are, Anderson replied, almost before he could stop himself. The air thickened, the atmosphere shifting from tense to electric. Harry sat back, eyes glittering. There it is, he said. There's the real Anderson, finally. Anderson steadied himself with a breath. I've been real the entire time, he said. You just don't like what you're seeing. Harry's jaw flexed, his voice hardening further. You know what I don't like, he said. I don't like being dragged back here only to be cross-examined like I'm on trial. I don't like your insinuations about my motives, my wife, my family. I don't like the smug way you look at me like I'm a case study instead of a person. Anderson's voice remained level. You agreed to come back. Your team reached out. You approved the topics. You knew what this was. Harry shot back instantly. I miscalculated. I thought you might have learned something from the last time. Apparently not. The tension was now a living thing in the room. Anderson leaned in slightly, his gaze unwavering. And what exactly did you learn from last time, Harry? Harry didn't hesitate. I learned that even in America, people like me are still expected to bow, just to different masters, the media instead of the crown. And yet, Anderson replied softly, in both systems, there are people who work, who serve, who take responsibility for what they say and do. You talk a lot about being trapped, but have you considered that the prison might not be the crown or the media, but your own refusal to be questioned? Harry's voice sharpened to a blade. Have you considered, he shot back, that the real problem is people like you pretending your questions are neutral when they're dripping with judgment? You hide behind the word journalism, the same way the palace hides behind duty. It's the same game, different set. Anderson sat very still. The silence stretched. Then, quietly, he asked, if you believe that, why are you here at all? Harry stared at him, breathing a little harder now. Because you needed me. Because your show needs relevance. Because I can walk into a room and the world still stops to watch, he said. That's why. The words were pure, unfiltered ego. This time, Anderson didn't bother to hide his reaction. His eyes hardened. "You're right about one thing," he said slowly. "The world is watching." For the first time all night, there was no softness left in his tone. "And they're seeing a version of you," Anderson continued. "You may not be able to control." Harry's face darkened, his voice dropping to a warning growl. "Careful, Anderson." Anderson held his gaze, something resolute now burning behind his eyes. "Oh, I am," he said. "The question is, are you?" The fuse was nearly gone. One more spark, and this wouldn't be an interview anymore. It would be an implosion. The air inside the 60-minute studio had become dense, almost metallic, the kind of tension you could taste at the back of your throat. Cameras rolled in perfect silence. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't move. No one dared break the invisible barrier between the two men locked in a battle of egos. Prince Harry sat with one ankle crossed over his knee, posture dripping with disdain, as though he were evaluating an inferior court jester rather than participating in a respected American news program. Anderson Cooper, normally the picture of calm precision, had shifted from polite patience to something firmer, colder, a steel, spine beneath a tailored suit. He inhaled once, deeply. "Harry," he said, "let's discuss something we haven't touched yet. Accountability. Responsibility. Words you use often, but rarely apply to yourself." Harry let out a quiet scoff, tapping his finger irritably against the arm of his chair. "Oh, here we go," he muttered. "Cue the moral lecture." Anderson ignored him. "Your critics, and even some supporters, say you've become defined by grievances, that instead of evolving, you've doubled down on bitterness." Harry smirked. "Right, because nothing says balanced journalism like regurgitating talking points from people obsessed with me." "That's not an answer," Anderson replied calmly. "That is the answer," Harry snapped. "I don't exist to soothe the insecurities of the public. If they can't handle my truth, that's their limitation, not mine." Anderson's jaw clenched. A tiny movement, but visible. "Your truth is not the issue here," he said slowly. "It's your inability to consider that anyone else might have one as well." Harry leaned forward, eyes glinting challengingly. "My life is not a debate stage. I don't owe you, the monarchy, or anyone else a single drop of justification. I've survived more than any of you could imagine. That earns me the right to speak however I wish. And it also earns you responsibility," Anderson countered, "especially when you broadcast your grievances to millions, and then blame the world when they ask questions." Harry hissed under his breath. "You're twisting everything. Again." Anderson exhaled slowly, pushing through the irritation tightening his voice. "Let's talk about Meghan." Immediately Harry stiffened, his stare sharpening like a blade. "No," he said sharply. "We're not doing that. You've spoken about her influence, her support." "You mean you've interpreted it?" Harry interrupted. As usual. Anderson tried again, steadying his voice. "Harry, the world sees your marriage as central to your journey." "I don't care what the world sees," Harry barked, voice rising. "I'm done letting outsiders dictate anything about my family." Anderson nodded, but his patience was slipping. "All right then," he said evenly. "Let's pivot again. Public responsibility. Many argue your children are being raised in the same spotlight you claim to have escaped. Is that fair to them?" Harry's laughter came sharp and humorless. "Ah, yes, the hypocrisy angle," he sneered. "Classic American journalism. You people really are obsessed." Anderson's composure cracked, just slightly. "You came here knowing these questions would be asked. And I'm answering them," Harry said, gesturing lazily. "Just not with the submissive tone you prefer." "I never asked you to be submissive," Anderson replied, voice cold. "Now, I asked you to be honest," Harry scoffed. "I've been more honest than this entire industry has been in decades." Anderson leaned forward, eyes locked on Harry's. "You've been combative. You've been dismissive. You've deflected, attacked, belittled, and mocked every single question that doesn't praise you." Harry's face hardened. "Your questions weren't questions. They were traps." "No," Anderson said firmly. "They were reflections, and you refused to look." Silence. A thick, dangerous silence. Harry finally broke it. "Maybe I don't like the person you see," he said quietly, venomously. Maybe, Anderson replied. That's because the person you're performing tonight isn't someone anyone can respect. That was it. Harry slammed his palm onto the arm of his chair, leaning forward aggressively. I'm done, he said. This is exactly like last time. Doubling down, pushing, prodding. You think I came here to be humiliated? No, Anderson said, voice calm but trembling with intensity. You came here to control the narrative, and when you couldn't, you unraveled. Harry stood abruptly, microphone wire tugging sharply. You're insufferable, he snapped. You think sitting in that chair makes you powerful? You're just another talking head. Without people like me, you're nothing. Anderson finally snapped. He stood too, slowly, deliberately, and for the first time all evening, he let the anger show. Let me be very clear, he said, voice low and cutting. This is not England. This is not the royal court, and you are not a prince here. Harry froze. Anderson continued. In this studio, respect is earned. It's not inherited. The crew held their breath. Harry's face flushed deep red. You can't talk to me like that, he hissed. I just did, Anderson replied. And I'll take it a step further. He pointed toward the edge of the set. We're done. This interview is over. You may leave. Harry blinked, stunned for a moment, then scowled. Fine, he spat. I'm leaving, and your career can choke on the ratings you won't get without me. He ripped off the mic, tossed it onto the chair, and stormed off the set, footsteps echoing like gunshots. The camera remained on Anderson, who took one slow breath and straightened his jacket. To our viewers, he said quietly, we apologize. We aim for dialogue, for clarity, for truth. Tonight, we witnessed something else entirely. A man so determined to defend himself that he refused to speak at all. He paused. Sometimes the hardest stories are the ones people tell without meaning to. Fade to black. The episode became the most talked about broadcast of the year, and the most explosive interview in 60 Minutes history happened. Again. And that was the moment the entire studio held its breath. The moment A.B. Scasio Royal stormed out for the second time. But now I want to hear your thoughts. Did Anderson make the right call, or did Harry go too far? Drop a comment below. And before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unbelievable story we uncover. More shocking interviews and dramatic breakdowns are on the way. Stay tuned.